The FBI estimates there are 100,000 minors.
100,000 American girls are involved in some form of the sex slavery trafficking business.
All these teens come from all over the country.
Young as 12 years old.
Many of these young girls are saying that they feel that they just can't escape this life.
Girls from the suburbs being targeted by pimps and forced to work as prostitutes.
Many of the working girls, some young enough for middle school, are not kidnapped, they're not runaways, they're tricked into walking the streets in exchange for clothing, jewelry, or just human love.
Human beings are now the second most lucrative commodity after drugs.
Years ago, my brother was a highly recruited high school football player, and I went with him on a visit to a major university. The coach walked us out into the empty stadium and very dramatically said, "Look around and imagine running out onto the field to the screams of 100,000 fans." It was pretty impressive. Not long ago, I was confronted with another number, another 100,000, only the effect wasn't impressive, it was horrifying. You see, I learned that every year in America, more than 100,000 kids, American kids, are on the market, the sex market, available to be bought and sold. I realized that even the stadium that houses my favorite NFL team isn't big enough to hold the number of victims that are bought and sold every year in this country. We're talking about human trafficking. It sounds real clinical, but all it really means is men forcing little children by force, fraud, or coercion into selling themselves for sex. Little children. Imagine a 14-year-old girl being bought and sold 5 times a day, 5 nights a week, 50 weeks a year. We're talking about the rape of a child more than 1,000 times in the course of a year. Now, if you figure there's 100,000 of those, do the math. As a father of 3 daughters, as a coach who's trained and worked with hundreds of other daughters, I can't imagine sitting by and doing nothing. Can you?
If I look at how many youth I serve, you know, SARC, the Sexual Assault Resource Center, has served about 200 girls in the last year, under the age of 18, right here in our own community. But what we know is for every girl that we identify, she can easily rattle off like 6 more girls that she has worked with, been sexually exploited with, that we don't know anything about. And so I imagine that whatever numbers we've projected, while mind-blowing, are actually small in comparison to what's really happening.
As men, we share some collective guilt for at least tolerating the culture that makes these kids vulnerable to being victimized, but we don't have to be paralyzed by that guilt. We can work to redeem the situation as men. The bottom line is that this is a supply and demand issue. Men are demanding kids for sex, and other men are supplying those kids for sex. So the way I see it, ending demand is a man's job.
I think of like one example. I met her in the emergency room. She had been a dancer, and she had a pimp that took all of her money every night when she came home from the club. And one night she kept some of the money because she was hoping to leave him. And he found her money that she had kept from him. And so he threw her out of a moving car. Some people called 911 and they took her into the emergency room where the ER staff found that she had sustained a lot of injuries, having recently just been gang raped. And so in the last 24 hours of her life, she'd been thrown from a moving vehicle, gang raped by multiple men, was running for her life from this pimp. And if you had seen her at the club that same day, you would never have necessarily known that. You would have seen a girl with a smile slapped on her face, going through the motions and trying to act sexy for a bunch of men who are going to give her a couple bucks and treat her like, you know, an object, not like a person.
This is an epic battle. It calls for heroes. It calls for men. So let's start by doing something simple, effective, and sustainable. That's what the EPIC project is all about. A simple plan to mobilize 1 man for every victim. 100,000 men. Men that will do 2 simple things. Invest a little bit of their resources and leverage a lot of their influence. You see, men created the problem. Better men have to solve it.